The world is speed running towards World War III, and now Trump narrowly survived the assassination attempt earlier on the week. Things are looking bad, relations between East and West are getting worse by the day, and very recently, a bunch of NATO countries have made announcements pushing us even closer to war. Poland in particular has been taking an incredibly hard stance against Russia as a result of their long and unpleasant history with Russia and the USSR. They're facing an illegal migrant crisis where tens of thousands are trying to break through the Polish border and invade their country. And Poland is laying blame directly at Russia's feet, claiming that these illegal migrants have been given assistance by the Russian government with the aim to get them into Poland and to destabilize their government. Now, the Polish border guards aren't like those in the UK or the US, though. They are committed to protecting their border, which means so far, very few illegal immigrants have made their way through. But as a result, the illegal immigrants have started attacking the border guards. A few days ago, a group of them threw makeshift spears over the border fence, injuring multiple border guards and actually killing one of them. As a result of this, these border guards have now been given the legal right to use lethal force in defending the border, a clear example of how a situation like this can escalate so rapidly. And in response to Russian assistance towards these migrants, Poland have taken a shot back at Russia by stating that Poland itself will shoot down Russian missiles if needed. Direct fighting between a NATO state and Russia is obviously an awful endgame for us to go down, but it seems like it might be where we're headed. In the UK, there is a similar story, as we've just had a new Prime Minister elected from the Labour Party, and while some might have hoped that this left-wing party would reduce their support for Ukraine, they've gone in the total opposite direction. Starmer has already promised an additional $3 billion in military aid to Ukraine, and he's also stated that there will be no restrictions placed upon the Ukrainians regarding the use of the missiles that they receive. If they want to fire them at Russians in Ukraine, that's fine. If they want to fire them at Russians in Crimea or the Donbass, that's fine. And if they want to fire them at Russians in Russia, that's fine too. Putin has repeatedly stated that actions like this will result in Russian actions in response, but the problem for Putin is he only really has two options: escalate the war against Ukraine itself, or act directly against NATO states like the UK. So far, thankfully, he hasn't resorted to striking NATO directly, but eventually, as these provocations keep coming in against him, it's looking more and more likely that he will. The US under Biden has continued their moves against Russia too. After failing to cripple Russia economically as they had hoped, they are continuing with their aim to cripple them militarily. F-16 fighter jets from the US and other NATO states are now on their way to Ukraine, and when it will only be a matter of weeks until they are used. So far, no one has ruled out using these jets to strike Russia itself either. Now, what has Russia done in response so far? Well, the immediate change to the conflict has been following Putin's trip to meet North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and North Korea's decision to send combat troops to Ukraine to fight alongside Russia. What will follow this? Well, the logical conclusion would be other Russian allies to join the fight, like CTSO members like Belarus. Russia has also been making strides with BRICS, with Modi, the leader of India, visiting Putin in Moscow, signing 9 agreements, along with a strategic partnership running for the next 6 years. And it's no surprise why, really, as they've both benefited massively from working with each other since the Ukraine invasion. Russia has found an alternate market to sell its oil to, and India has been buying up millions of barrels of oil from Russia at 30 to 50% discounts. Now, BRICS is growing further, with a number of countries like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, and even Malaysia seeking to join and create prosperity. And of course, the new Cold War with China is ramping up slowly too, despite a lull in recent months. Just a few days ago, they sent their largest ever collection of warplanes across the median line of the Taiwan Strait into Taiwanese airspace. 66 aircraft, including nuclear-capable bombers, all together flew into Taiwanese airspace in a massive escalation and a warning to Taiwan for what is coming next. Everyone seems to be forgetting for some reason, but China has declared that within a couple of decades, Taiwan will be a part of China, and unless the entire democratic system rooted into Taiwan is overthrown in the near future, that means war is coming. The US and other Western nations have repeatedly stated their commitment to maintaining the status quo, and a Western military buildup is apparent everywhere we look, particularly in Asia, with things like AUKUS cementing Australia, the US, and the UK's alliance even deeper. And this all represents a total, complete shift of the direction the world has been trending towards for my entire lifetime. For literally decades, the West decided that hyperglobalization was the way forward, that by outsourcing resource production to other countries, it would bring us all together and create prosperity. But this 30-year-long plan has been a total failure and proven conclusively wrong. Now, as this all kicks off, the West as a whole is terrified because our energy and resource dependency on these countries, which are enemies in all but name, has never been worse. And one of these specific commodities where this is a problem is nickel. Two of the largest producers in the world are Indonesia and the Philippines, both countries which have been drifting away from the West and towards Russia and China. And whilst we can still import from them, we are literally shooting ourselves in the foot because these countries produce some of the dirtiest commodities in the world, and ESG mandates are swiftly sweeping through all of our countries, which makes buying from these countries more and more expensive. And who's the other biggest producer of nickel? Well, Russia, of course, with some of the largest reserves in the entire world, as they produce 10 times as much as the US. Clearly, this is only going to become more of a problem as we go forward, as China controls much of that production from Indonesia too. And our demand for nickel is only going to continue to soar as electric vehicles are forced upon us, and nickel is one of the most important resources for EV batteries out there. Nickel has the energy density that gives the batteries range. And I'm not joking when I say the demand is expected to soar, with S&P expecting it to grow by 23 times by 2035. Not by 23%, but by 2,300%. And government restrictions are making it harder and harder to source this metal, as 75% of all nickel mined in the world is sourced by countries that do not abide by free trade rules, which means it can't be imported into the US thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act. And if every single ounce of that final 25% were exported to the US, it still wouldn't be enough to fulfill American demand by 2035. We always see a huge focus on lithium these days, with a hefty 6 kilos of lithium required for each EV built, whilst we actually need 29 kilos of nickel. As a result of this, our countries and the US in particular are scrambling to find nickel deposits. So we don't find ourselves cut off from the world's supply, as Russia is less and less likely to give us access every week. Currently, there is only one nickel mine in the whole of the United States, so I think it's pretty clear why this is such a problem. But Alaska Energy Metals, ticker symbol AKEMF, is working on fixing this massive problem. They're a company exploring for nickel in North America with a massive project they call the Nikolai Project. They're run by an experienced team in Alaska, specifically looking for domestic resources of nickel, as it looks likely to be very lucrative with the state of geopolitics over recent years. Recently completed and historical drilling results have confirmed the presence of substantial mineral resource estimates containing nickel, along with a bunch of other resources like copper, cobalt, platinum, palladium, and gold. Alaska Energy Metals' land is well located with solid infrastructure links, making the extraction of nickel potentially valuable. They have a mining claim on 22,400 acres with an option to purchase another 10,000 acres should they choose to. The property is one of the most promising sites in the entirety of North America, and Alaska Energy Metals are currently trading at all-time lows with a market cap of around $10 million, meaning if all the exploration phase goes well, they'll be poised to do very well indeed. Now, Alaska Energy Metals' land had a previous owner, and that owner spent $30 million on drilling and other exploration efforts to define the nickel in the ground. And Alaska Energy Metals bought all of that data and the land package for just $1.4 million, making it practically the deal of the century. The management team behind Alaska Energy Metals is incredibly robust. Last year, they added Mark Bejic to their board of directors, who's a former mayor of Anchorage, Alaska, and was a US senator until 2015. Recently, some real capital market strength has been added to the board with the election of Mario Vetro, Tyrone Brettenbach, and Ian Stalker, not to mention Paul Matsiak, on the advisory board. Now, here's the bombshell. There's a private company out there using some brand new technology, including AI, to find nickel. And this company is backed by some of the richest and best businessmen in the world, like Jeff Bezos, Richard Branson, Ray Dalio, and others on top. Now, this state-of-the-art system thinks that there is a massive deposit of nickel right next to Alaska Energy Metals property, so the company backed by all those billionaires staked a large tract of land right next door. Alaska Energy Metals is actively working on defining the resource right now, which means the single biggest catalyst for shareholder value creation is right around the corner.